In the world of human minds, intelligence is a fascinating quality. But when extreme brainpower mixes with harmful intentions, we encounter a mysterious figure, the high IQ killer. Here in this video, we have a prime example of what happens when a killer with a 220 IQ meets an interrogator. So without further ado, let's investigate this. On February 17, 2019, David Wright and his friend Christopher went to a street corner for a drug deal at 3:40 a.m. But it wasn't a normal deal. Both sides planned to rob each other. David asked the buyers to give up their things. Instead of complying, they pepper sprayed Chris and ran away. Shortly after, David took out a gun from his waist and shot Raul Quadros in the chest, killing him instantly. David and Chris ran off and hid the gun in a field, thinking they wouldn't get caught. However, cameras in the area recorded the incident, leading to their quick identification. David was arrested 2 days later. He's still confident that his cleverness will prove his innocence, but the evidence seems to tell a different story. Certainly, in this scenario, there's been a media-covered incident leading to 4 arrests. The police have evidence and eyewitnesses linking a person named David to the scene, but David denies involvement. The detective believes David was present due to evidence like video footage and Facebook messages about a possible drug deal.
All right, so let me just go over this stuff real quick with you, and then we'll get started, okay?
Okay.
David insists he wasn't there and was with his girlfriend, but the detective has data from his phone's GPS that contradicts this. David explains he left his phone with someone named Memphis, who had it during the supposed time of the incident. The detective is trying to uncover the truth about what happened and why, while David is trying to downplay his connection to the situation. David's current defense is based on the idea that someone else might have used his phone and been present at the scene, not him. He's also trying to create doubt by saying he can't remember the exact day of the events. However, this defense seems unlikely, as the other person would have to look exactly like David, access his Facebook, and even change their skin color according to David's description of the perpetrator. The detective is explaining to David that they're getting their information from various sources, and he's the last person they're talking to. The detective acknowledges that Chris might be loyal to David, but others are providing information about who was involved. They have video evidence from different locations, like Chevron and Shell. David's associates, Credit, Cody, and Ray, also known as Tano, are all arrested. The detective highlights that messages on phones confirm plans among them, including picking up David. The detective is trying to understand the motive behind the incident and is seeking David's cooperation to reveal why it happened. The detective has evidence from Facebook messages between Chris and Brianna that they arranged a deal.
But playing the whole I wasn't there, it's not helpful to you, man. You're not helping yourself out.
This deal involved meeting at a Chevron gas station, and you all went there and proceeded. Here's what's at stake. Your girlfriend could unknowingly become part of this situation. If you try to use her as an alibi for the murder, she might get involved as an accessory. This isn't a threat, it's just the likely outcome. The detective plans to talk to her, and if she lies to protect you while there's video proof you weren't together, she could get in trouble.
And if you want your girlfriend jammed up because you just set her up for it, then that's your choice.
You know, you can't threaten me with jamming her up.
It's not a threat, man. I'm just telling you how it plays out. Like, I'm going to go talk to her, and she's going to be dumb enough to lie for you. When I got video evidence that you weren't with her, and you just told me you were with her all weekend, and she's going to tell me that.
The detective understands that maybe you got into this situation quickly, and they don't necessarily think you're a cold-blooded killer. They're suggesting that if the incident happened accidentally, like if you panicked and shot the person by mistake, now is the time to share that information. If you wait, people might not believe your story. Accidental shootings can happen when someone gets scared or reacts unexpectedly. When your finger is on the trigger of a gun, a reflex, called the sympathetic reflex, can cause it to go off unintentionally, especially in high-stress situations. This term has been used by police officers to explain accidental shootings. But I'm talking about your situation, not the police. Staying silent during an interrogation is often a good idea, along with requesting a lawyer. But David in this case is outright denying any involvement despite evidence connecting him to the incident. His ego might be clouding his judgment, and this approach is making things worse for him and those around him. If we switch roles, imagine you're the detective. Your goal is to determine if David feels any remorse for his actions or if he's mainly concerned about the consequences. David claims innocence and insists he's not worried about trouble. However, the detective has evidence from Cody's phone that includes David's contact information and conversations between them. The detective isn't trying to be confrontational. He's just being straightforward about the evidence they have. This is the same approach used when meeting someone to discuss things openly. In this situation, David's response to a piece of evidence reveals something important. The detective shows David evidence that ties him to Cody, but David admits only to meeting Cody and nothing more. This response indicates that David might be influenced by concrete evidence and could potentially be convinced to share more details. The detectives then ask David about his meeting with someone named Tony. Initially, David downplays the importance of the meeting, but as the detectives press, he reveals that Tony wanted a gun from him. The detectives point out that this information is relevant, especially since Tony is under arrest for murder. The detectives imply that David's association with Tony is significant in understanding the case's context. When David's actions are questioned, he becomes defensive and implies a lack of trust in the police and others. The detectives stress that they're not solely relying on people's accounts, but are considering a combination of evidence, such as communications and videos. They emphasize that they're not foolish enough to base everything on unreliable sources. As the conversation continues without much progress, the detectives change their approach. They remind David that he's known for being trustworthy and that he's not the type to let others take the fall for him. They appeal to his reputation and suggest that he's not acting in accordance with his character. The detectives are using various strategies to encourage David to open up. They've shown evidence, discussed his actions, and appealed to his reputation, all in an attempt to get him to reveal more information about the situation. The detective challenges David about his feelings toward his friends Chris, Cody, and others who might face trouble due to their involvement in the incident. The detective implies that it's not right for others to take the blame for something he did. David insists he didn't do anything wrong, and that the detective is trying to get him to admit to something false. The detective expresses concern about the consequences that could affect Chris and the others. David maintains his innocence and seems disinterested in the situation. The detective acknowledges that many people have been in David's position before. As the conversation progresses, the detective becomes more direct, suggesting that David cares more than he's admitting. David remains adamant about his innocence and does not want to engage with someone who he believes is accusing him of lying. The detective clarifies that there's a difference between calling someone a liar and pointing out inconsistencies in their story. The detective denies being disrespectful and questions David's claims about his whereabouts. David is asked about meeting Cody and his movements on a particular night. David explains that he doesn't leave his house much, except for short walks with his dog. The detective questions David's claim of not leaving his house and asks about his presence near a Starbucks on Evergreen. The detective is looking for clarity and possibly trying to catch David in any contradiction. As the detective presses David with direct questions, he becomes uncomfortable and defensive due to his ego being hurt. Narcissists like David often react strongly when they feel challenged. The detective continues with straightforward questions to try and make David reveal more information. David is caught in a lie about his whereabouts on a specific night. This makes him uneasy, and the detective uses this discomfort to keep pushing for the truth. David's ego-driven behavior can make him snap under pressure and reveal more than he intended. The detective asks about David's activities and movements, specifically on the day in question. David initially resists providing a detailed account, claiming he doesn't keep strict track of his actions. The detective stresses that, due to the murder investigation, details like clothing and interactions matter. David argues that he doesn't need to account for his movements in great detail, but the detective explains that such details could clear him as a suspect. The detective uses his knowledge of David's behavior and reactions to prod for more information. The conversation becomes tense when the detective mentions David's lying. David denies being upset, but the detective perceives his reactions as disingenuous. The detective confronts David about his lies and asks if he wants to share what really happened. David avoids admitting anything, and the conversation ends. Ultimately, David's lack of cooperation and refusal to provide details led to his conviction. His history of criminal behavior and his unwillingness to defend himself in court resulted in a 40-year prison sentence without parole in October 2020. And that's that for today's video, folks. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content. Also, don't forget to comment below and let us know which interrogation part impressed you the most. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.